Hello and welcome. Last month, a US Navy logistics officer told a journalist something quietly unsettling. He said, "We are no longer just watching Iran. We are watching who is making Iran harder to pressure, who is helping Iran in very simple word." So that sentence changes the story. And now, real question is no longer just about Iran. The real question, or the hard hitting question, is whether a larger regional power is quietly helping Tehran to absorb American pressure. And we all know that power is China. So if you live in Chicago, Dallas, or Seattle, or Portland, Oregon, Iran might feel distant to you. Yet, what happens in Persian Gulf shapes oil prices, global market, and American strategy. So, welcome to In Focus. I have spent nearly 2 decades in newsrooms and research watching how conflicts are unfolded to general public and how they are basically told behind the closed doors. So on this channel, we try to close the gap. This is In Focus with Dr. Adeel. You all are welcome on this channel. So let's talk about this pressing question which we all face today. Is China actually helping Iran against the United States? So when people hear that phrase, especially in the US, they imagine missiles, weapons, shipments, or CIA's secret bases. It's a Cold War style alliance. But we are living in a modern era. Modern pressure wars really work in this way. So we have to think a little bit out of the box. Think about gas prices. Think about how quickly grocery bills react when oil markets move. Now imagine Washington trying to squeeze Iran economically, and Washington is putting a lot of pressure, while another major power quietly keeps Iranian oil flowing. And China is already Iran's largest customer, even after sanctions were tightened. So Iranian crude oil continued to reach Chinese markets and Chinese refineries through rebranded shipments, ship to ship transfers, and complex trading routes that no one can imagine. That was the strategy between China and Iran. So this is not ideology. It is a very strong strategy. Because if we talk about sanctions, sanctions only work when a country's main income is cut off. So if the income continues, what will happen? Political pressure weakens. And in Iran's case, oil is Iran's political bloodstream. And China gains discounted energy and long-term supply security. And that is very important for China because Chinese are very shrewd businessmen. So Beijing gains leverage over both Iran and Washington in two different ways. This is not charity. China is not doing charity to Iran. China is buying influence over a heavily pressured state. So they are getting cheap oil. Oil is only the first layer. The second layer is finance. So Chinese banks, trading companies, and intermediaries give Iran ways to move their oil money outside parts of the American financial system. Not perfectly, but even to soften the sharpest edge of US sanctions. So, in that way, Iran is earning money as well with the help of China. That is the second layer. So, there is also quite a form of support. China does not need to send weapons to strengthen Iran. It only needs to help Iran manage this massive pressure exerted by United States of America and Israel. So they are helping in telecommunication networks, they are helping in surveillance systems and data infrastructures, and they are helping Iran to have more internal state control and reduce vulnerability during unrest. And they are helping China to detect cyber attacks as well, or political disruption. So, over the last decade, pressure campaigns against Iran relied on sanctions only and internal instability as well. So we were thinking that might isolation will work. So if a state becomes technologically resilient, those pressure points become very hard or even harder to exploit for an outer power. So here, in this case, diplomacy also matters. In international forums, what Beijing is doing, Beijing often challenges unilateral sections and frames American pressure as destabilizing narrative. So that narrative basically influences how allies respond and whether Washington builds a coalition or stands alone. That is a very important point. So, inside defense circles, another conversation which is very interesting has quietly begun in last week. Recently, regional sources described an unusual incident, and that unusual incident involves a US F-15 fighter aircraft operating from Kuwait, indeed, three aircraft. So during routine operations, all the three aircrafts reportedly experienced a sudden system failure. No missile launched, no hostile engagement, just a cascading breakdown, and those F-15 went down. Officially, what was said that it happened due to a friendly fire. So officially, it was treated as a technical issue. But what is happening in private quarters? Privately, some analysts asked whether future conflicts could involve interference with military systems. That is very much happening. There is no public proof in this specific case, but this debate is going on. Yet, this concern is growing with every passing day. So, if we talk about modern military systems, they rely heavily on satellite timing, satellite signals, and digital networks. We have seen during India-Pakistan war as well. If those signals are delayed or disrupted, chaos can occur without firing a single missile. So, analysts are watching China's expanding satellite and data infrastructure very closely, because that digital layer could reshape future conflicts, and that digital structure can also reshape this current war between Iran and United States. So there are also reports of technical exchanges between China and Iranian researchers, and they have collaborated in many areas like propulsion science and in advanced materials and guidance systems. So all these three areas are very much important. And one field is drawing attention is hypersonic technology. And we all have heard recently about hypersonic technology. So all these are building blocks. So China is overtly and covertly helping Iran in many areas. So, if we talk about the recent incident, recently a Chinese cargo aircraft, not one, there were three, four aircraft landed in Iran under a civilian logistic profile. So, public tracking showed nothing unusual, but the unloading process was unusually fast and that was tightly controlled. So there is no confirmed evidence of military cargo, yet the flight was quietly flagged for deeper analysis by security circles in the Middle East and in Asia. So this is how modern strategic assistance often look like. And that is happening in recent war as well. It's not dramatic announcements or camera filming. So it looks like engineers, softwares, technology, and networks. So all these things basically reshape military resilience in any war. So that is how, despite of having sanctions, Iran is giving a tough time to United States. And this all leads to the larger point. And that larger point is China does not need Iran to defeat the United States. China only needs the United States to remain strategically distracted in this area. And Chinese want US to deplete their resources in this region. So every aircraft carrier deployed in the Gulf is one not deployed in the Western Pacific. Every Middle East crisis consumes heavily political attention in the Washington. And every spike in oil prices complicates American domestic politics. So all these factors are very much important for your consideration. Helping Iran survive pressures helps Beijing manage its long-term competition with the United States, because Chinese do not want to fight with America. They want to keep that competition alive. So this is not a traditional kind of alliance like NATO alliance. It is a strategic calculation between China and Iran. So Iran needs China more than China needs Iran. What does that mean? That means Beijing keeps the leverage. So the answer is very clear. Yes, China is helping Iran. And not in the dramatic way many people imagine, that they are sending missiles and they are sending ammunition to Iran. China is helping Iran to become harder to isolate, harder to financially suffocate, and harder to politically fracture. And how China is doing that? Beijing weakens one of the Washington's most powerful tool. And that tool Washington has used over the decades. And that tool is economic pressure. And that raises a bigger question. And that bigger question is, how long can American economy sustain a prolonged confrontation in Iran? That is a very important question. Because if that answer changes stakes of China's quiet support, it becomes far more serious. And this is a serious issue to think about. And we are going to talk about this issue in our next vlog. This is In Focus with Dr. Adeel. Thank you very much for watching.